I'll start with having you kind of introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Okay.
Taking a second to get to Facebook. I think we're good now. Awesome. All right, so we are live now. So we are doing one of our Q&As that we have right now during this COVID-19. We have Amethyst May. If you guys were with us a few years ago, she came to Grace and gave us this class on parenting in a digital age. And man, we're all living in a digital age now, and things have changed so much. So we thought it'd be great to have her back on and kind of educate us a little bit more on how to do that. And there's different apps that have even started now that weren't around last time she was around. So digital is forever changing. So Amethyst, can you tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your family?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me back. I loved coming to visit you guys last time, and it's great to be back with you on a total virtual stage, right? The world has turned upside down. So yeah, I'm a mom of 3. I have a 21-year-old, 18-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So elementary, high school, and college. So all the different kind of areas that we attack as a parent or that you're nervous about for the future. And I currently am a health and wellness coach, but for 17 years prior to this, I worked with a nonprofit organization benefiting teens. And so we touched on all topics that affected teens, from, sex, drugs, and rock and roll to, just simple relationships to screens. And the biggest change that I saw happen over those 17 years was by far the introduction of the smartphone. So as my children were getting older and starting to beg for that device, I started leaning in truly just as a mom to do my research and be prepared how to answer their queries and their insistence that they were the only ones, without this device in their back pocket. So it really just started as a journey of a mom who started a small group Bible study in my book study of about how to raise boys in my living room. The principal of our school got wind of it. She asked me to bring it to her school, and here we are 4 years later, and I present all over the place now. So
awesome. Well, like you said, it's definitely needed more now than ever with everyone living in this digital age and stuff. So, well, I'll start off with just a quick one, a little bit maybe a personal question. But how is your family dealing with the change, online education? You have a senior in high school who's graduating digitally. How are you guys doing with kind of the digital change?
Oh, it's hard. We are I was, a minute late to this because my son was being interviewed for another church on how it's impacting him as a senior. And there's so much loss there, right? And so everything from my 5th grader who's doing distance learning, and she's probably working the hardest, if I'm honest. Her Christian school has been on it. They only took 2 days off. They skipped spring break. They're plowing through, and they're done this Friday. So we're looking forward to that break, because she went from me bragging about her never being on screens to always being on screens, from choir practice, piano practice, musical practice, everything. So that was a huge adjustment for her as an 11-year-old. And then my senior, they took more of a break as the public school tried to figure out how to implement this. And it's been really hard to keep him motivated to finish the race strong. Really, really hard, because he's a type of kid, as most people are, who like to learn in person, right? And to have that interaction. So that's been rough. And of course, all the losses that come with not getting to have your senior year. And then my college age student who's at home, she's completing her AA next week. And distance learning has been very hard for her because there are teachers who are older who aren't accustomed to technology. And so they're just not teaching at all. And they're just throwing the book at them and saying, teach yourself. So it's been pretty hard. It's been heartbreaking. And then of course we don't have all the devices that we need. So I have been without my computer most of the day, every day.
Yeah, definitely. And we just heard that some of the, colleges in the fall are even going with distance learning. So it's something we're going to be sitting in here for a while. So definitely navigating this, being a parent and a teacher and a monitor. So, well, you said one of those questions about your daughter who was never on technology and now on one of them. That's actually one of our questions was, my kids normally don't use technology, but now with distant learning, how can I manage their screen time?
Such a good question. And it's something that every single one of us is asking ourselves, right? Especially if we are already particular about the time that they spend. And if you heard me when I came and spoke to you before, I talked to you and I shared with you about what the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests for each age group for how much time each of those age groups should spend. So what's really interesting is that the experts are now saying something that's going to help you feel less guilty. And that is what I'm excited to share with you. They are now saying that while we used to monitor their screen time by quantity, we are now monitoring it by quality. So all screens are not made the same. So if you are thinking, oh my goodness, I tried to keep them on screens for 2 hours or less before, and now they're on all the time. Well, let's look at the quality, right? One, school, of course, education, right, is necessary, and this is just how it has to happen now. The other thing that's also necessary that we're learning about our kids, which is really cool, is how social they are and how even at the youngest age, right? Even as a preschooler or a young elementary student, all the way up through the ages that I have, my kids are struggling the most with missing their friends and missing holidays, right? Missing Easter with your family. So the only way we can keep in touch now is through a screen. So the quality that comes through those screen experiences, whether it's like a Zoom play date, right? Or piano practice or choir practice or Sunday family meetings after church, well, those bring real great quality, right? So don't feel guilty about the things that bring real value, right? And then there's also the things that are like creative, so my daughter spends a ton of time on YouTube looking for crafts to do. Well, I want her to do that because what else is she going to do with her free time? She can't go and do play dates like she normally would. So if she's learning how to be creative, and then I was the benefactor of that on Mother's Day and my birthday, she made me all these wonderful homemade gifts. So I just want to encourage you from the experts that take away all the guilt, parents, because I know that we feel terrible about it. There's a whole other question, and I'll go there if that's what you want me to, but of keeping them safe is a whole nother conversation. But what I want you to know from the experts is we're going to look at quality over quantity during this time.
That is so good. Yeah, my daughter was sitting on the bed the other day with her phone, as a 5-year-old with a FaceTime date with her girlfriend. And it was like, what are we doing? But then that brought her so much joy too, simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like we almost practiced this a little bit. You kind of led right into another question are there any benefits with the educational apps? And the question was geared towards like the preschool age.
Mm-hmm.
Are those just filling their time, or is there actually benefits on those?
I think every single one is different, right? And so I can't speak to them at large. But there's definitely research that says for the preschool brain, it's different we're not necessarily talking about quality versus quantity. With the preschool brain, it really is adversely affected by screens. And I can share with you some links that your viewers can do some research and reading if that's in their situation. I have some people who have come and heard my talks in the past and who just felt very strongly that I needed to get this home more clearly, that our preschoolers should not be on screens very often, that it truly changes their brain. So I would caution against that. If you want to teach them their ABCs or their numbers or those types of things, you can do that, so I would encourage you to not let the screens take that role when you can do that. One day they're going to be taking AP calculus like my son, and I cannot help with that. But you can help with their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. And what you may say is, well, but they just beg for it. They beg for it. And that is something that is taught. It is a habit. It's just a habit. So what I do want to encourage you is to not let those preschoolers be consumed by screens, because the habit becomes addictive. And then all of a sudden you are no longer in control and they are in control.
One of the things that I'm definitely struggling with as a parent is just like this. I'm on Zoom right now, and I have a meeting, and I'm on a computer all day. And then they're like, well, how can we this whole model of what we want them to do?
Right.
Well, you guys can't be on screen time, but we're on it all day now in the house. We used to be it at the home. Such a difficult, balance to try to have. So I think that's very good about the, those educational apps. Maybe now a little bit geared specifically towards, COVID-19, this pandemic we're in, and social media. Like you said, high school students, elementary, middle school students are so social. And I think we're finding out that social media is not that social, actually. It's not a replacement for in-person, face-to-face, recess, lunch, and stuff like that. So how do you see this pandemic changing the way people are using social media?
It's just huge, right? Again, you see people doing, getting together on Friday nights with a drink. You see Easter, we had Zoom, after we streamed our church service, right? You see young kids who wouldn't normally be on screens getting together with their classmates just to see them, just to hear their voice, to have some sort of interaction. You have younger kids asking their parents to use their device so that they can FaceTime their friends. So it is totally changing everything, because it, again, like I said earlier, it is the only platform for social connection right now. And so from that perspective, we do need to let the older child do that. But again, everything should be supervised. Everything should have a filter. Every device that you're handing them should have a filter. And we can talk about this in a minute, but we want to keep those devices out in the open and not behind closed doors. Closed doors are sometimes needed for quiet, right? If you have like a preschooler or a toddler running around and you have an elementary kid who needs a quiet room to have class, it's understandable. That's why you need to have those devices protected before they go behind a closed door. But just wanting to, be social on their devices behind the closed doors is probably not a great idea, especially if you haven't taken the steps to protect that device to keep it safe.
I think that's one thing parents definitely, and we're going to get into that, is all these platforms can be used for good, and they can also be used for bad. It's really on our jobs as parents on the front end to really safeguard our kids, just like we would when they go ride a bike in the street. We wouldn't just turn a blind eye to it. We need to do the same thing with this technology. One of the platforms, and you mentioned it with your daughter, was YouTube. And YouTube has an app, or another one called YouTube Kids. Is YouTube Kids safe, where I could just hand it to my daughter, say, you're on YouTube Kids? That means that they've taken all the precautions. I don't need to do anything as a parent. You're not going to find anything bad on there.
Don't we wish? And that's what's a little bit alarming and scary about that, is with the name YouTube Kids, you're thinking, well, it's safe. I've heard too many stories from parents who have done just that, who've just trusted the name, handed their kids the device, and maybe have overheard something where it was an explicit word. There were suggestive commentary, or even inappropriate images and dramatizations happening. So no, it is not a safe platform for your kids. It's safer than regular YouTube, and there are parental controls that you can put on both to make them safer. And YouTube does look at all of their uploads, but you can imagine that they don't have time to look at the millions that are uploaded every single day. So it really is to our benefit. And one way that you can tell, just so you guys know, and you might notice this already, if you go to your YouTube channel right now, your YouTube page, and you will find populated at the top of it ideas for you based on what you've been viewing. So for example, if you're a Marvel superhero fan, you're going to see a whole bunch of Captain America and, you know, all of these great Marvel movies or clips that come up, right? If a whole bunch of scantily clad women come up, you should be alarmed. You shouldn't say, oh no, they're giving me bad advertisement. You should say, uh-oh, someone has been looking at these kinds of things before I got to this computer. Okay, so there's not necessarily history, but that's how they look at history. And that's the same on Instagram through the Explorer tool. There's no history, but it populates based on viewing history.
Okay, that's very good. And there's lots of apps. Like I'm on Spotify as well. I just saw Spotify came out with a Spotify Kids. All these apps that we use as adults are targeting these kids, I think with hopefully, you know, pure motives, but naturally, I think one of the things you said last time that was very beneficial, still stuck with me, you know, years later, is, you know, even I think the FBI, you said, is behind what the predators are doing. And so then us as parents and app developers, they're way behind the FBI. And so if the FBI can't catch up with it, we're not going to catch up with it either. So we're always kind of playing behind the 8 ball.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So just to everyone who's jumping on Facebook with us, we're here with Amethyst May, just doing a Q&A on parenting in a digital age. And just this is something we're in the middle of. So if you guys have any questions, we're going to spend just a little bit more time with Q&A, and then we're going to jump into her actually showing you some practical hands-on steps that you could put some safeguard on your kids' devices. So one of the questions that we just came in is, how can we prepare for what will hopefully be changing with how much we're currently using technology as things begin to open up? What are some ways that we can be ready to move away from things like Zoom classes? Like the kids' brains, right? They're conditioned to start learning this way and start, you know, realizing that, oh, crafts on tech, you know, I can learn crafts and cooking on YouTube. How do we change those habits post COVID-19?
That's such a good question. And it's a question that is the first time in history, right? It is so fascinating that we are experiencing something that literally has never happened before. My son, who is not going to be able to graduate live, is the first time since World War II when men were shipping off to war. And even some of those men were able to graduate. Isn't that fascinating? And so just be really gentle with yourself and knowing that there's no right or wrong answer. But what I would say is that obviously prayer is number one, and asking God for wisdom to navigate this really weird world that we're living in. And then two is just creativity and intentionality is what I would say. The intentionality will go with some of the things we talk about a little bit later. It's about communication and about you being the boss. Okay, so your kids are going to try to tell you, depending on what age they are, whether they're young through a tantrum or whether they're older with their words, or whether they're teenagers and they slam doors in your face, they're going to try to tell you that they are the boss of this device and you are not. And I just want to remind you of who paid for the device. It's probably you. Who pays for the bill? It's probably you. And so you are the boss. Okay, I just want to remind you that because your kids are going to try to tell you otherwise. All right. And so what you might want to start doing preemptively before school is out, for example, is to say, you know, sit down and talk about this. What are the benefits that we've gotten from spending more time, you know, on the screens? How has this benefited us? And what are the things that maybe haven't been as beneficial? What do we miss about real life, face-to-face life? And how are we going to transition? And come up with a plan. And if they don't want to contribute, no big deal. Then you can go ahead and just be prepared to say what you're comfortable with. For example, after school's over, for example, my daughter is done on Friday. So I could say to her, hey, you know, I know that school is ending Friday, and, you know, what are you excited about for that? And I just want to be really clear that we're not going to be spending 9 hours a day on screens anymore. So you no longer have to show up at class every day at 9:30. So we're not going to be doing that. And yes, you can occasionally FaceTime your friends, you know, and yes, you can occasionally play Pictionary, you know, with your friends to get your relational connection, but it's not going to be all of this time on the screens. But I want to warn you that you are going to feel this magnetic pull towards it, and that's okay and normal. And that is how you feel whenever you have established any sort of habit that you need to reel back in, right? We're adults. We know how this is, whether it's having all of the Easter candy around the house and needing to stop eating it, right? We have to be like, whoa, pull back. We have to be really intentional. And so it's the same with this. So I would just say, yeah, keep really clear about who's in charge, right? Keep positive communication and creativity, but also really great communication so that, for example, when Saturday comes and school's over, or Monday, when it would normally be a school day again, I can say, hey, remember, school isn't happening anymore, so we're going to get outside more. We're going to ride our bikes more. We're going to draw a 4-square court in the court, and we're going to practice 4-square together, right? So it does require you to be more of a participant in your kid's life. And so for those of you who work full-time from home, God bless you. I feel for you the most, honestly. You have it harder than anyone, unless there's those who are sick, right? Because you are like trying to do your job, help kids who have school, manage toddlers or babies who, need you. It's really hard. So I understand that the screen might be like a babysitter for you, and that's a whole nother discussion. But if you have the ability to be a part of their lives, then it will require that you help make it more creative. And then of course there's things that they can do, like reading, right? We can think of like there are things that they enjoy. We can help them create a list of, when you're bored, here are some things that you can do.
That's so good. We're going to spend it's probably about 5 minutes or so on some questions. So if you have another question, we have a few of them already on the docket. Send them in. Some of them might get answered here. This is something we want you guys to share. If you're on Facebook right now, share this, because she's going to get in here pretty soon. I'm putting safeguards on your actual devices. She's going to walk you how to go through some Apple device and stuff like that. You can put these safeguards to protect your kids tonight before they wake up tomorrow and get back on the tablets again. One of the questions, and this is one that we've all heard before, and so I think I'm really excited to hear what you said this. We hear it all the time that kids have to learn technology because we're in a technology-based world. But is that really true? Do we have to give them this technology?
That's a very poignant question, right? And one that might make us feel guilty if we don't allow them to be exposed the way that the Joneses are, right? This is my son just got off this interview, like I just mentioned, and the pastor asked him about the influence that I had on his life. And he said I was very stiff, which I laughed so hard. I think he was trying to not say strict and hurt my feelings, but that's really what he meant. But he said, but she is the person who made me the man I am today. And what a compliment, right? Because he's a wonderful young man. He became that way. What he's referring to is that I taught him from a very young age that he was going to have to be okay with being different. The call of a Christian is to be different. And in our family, you were going to be different. So for example, he was the last person in his class, even at a Christian school, to get a smartphone. He did not get one until after he graduated the 8th grade, and then he got a used one and had all the parental controls set up on it, right? To this day, he doesn't have Safari on his phone. He's 18, but I know too much, and I know what happens when you have Safari on your phone and you're a young man. So I am all for being a bit on the more strict side, because the reality is they will learn what they need to know, right? So when they're in class and they have to make a PowerPoint presentation, they're going to learn how to make it. The teacher's not going to expect them to know how to make a PowerPoint before they teach them, right? I'm trying to think like what other technology things, Excel spreadsheets, for example, right? They sadly don't really teach that in school, but when it's necessary, they will be taught, or we can teach them if it's not being taught. So I don't think anyone is going to miss the boat by not letting them do it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I think we can trust the process, but the biggest thing is that just as our kids are experiencing peer pressure, we experience parent peer pressure, right? Like everybody else is letting their kids have a smartphone. So side note, if you're not familiar with this, there's something called the Wait Till 8th contract. And this was put together by some caring parents so that you could go to your child's classmates and ask them to sign this petition that says, I will not let my child have a smartphone till 8th grade because it's not beneficial to their brain. And the more of you who sign that, like for my class example, for example, there's about 14 of us who signed it. So when my 11-year-old comes to me next year when she's in junior high and says, everyone else in my class has one except me, I can say, actually, no, there's 14 others who don't, and they have signed a contract saying that they don't. So that's just kind of one example of, yeah, there are always going to be kids who know more, but I truly believe that they will learn as they need to.
Very good. One of the follow-up questions was regarding that preschool brain that you were talking about. And so you said that the technology changes the preschool brain. And so the question is, if they've already made the mistake and are allowing too much screen time, other than ripping off the Band-Aid, preparing for the tantrum, anything like that, is there any way to help a preschooler really with withdrawals of technology?
So good. I'm going to send you the link so you can send it to your, your congregation later so they can read it and watch it. But you could either rip it off, and just quickly and just like change, or you can slowly start tapering it back, right? So if they're spending 3 hours a day this week, let's just cut it back to 2, right? And the following week, 1, right? And then the following week, 30 minutes. And they may be upset as it goes, but it won't be like the wild tantrum, you know what I mean? So you could go either way. You know your child the best, but don't be afraid of the tantrum. And I know this is super scary as a parent because you're like, you don't know my kid. It gets scary. I get it. I've been through it 3 times. I totally understand, but you are the boss. And my biggest piece of advice, and I know they're preschoolers, so they don't fully understand it, is to hold their chubby little cheeks and just say, Mommy's doing this because she loves you. And it's not too early to apologize. Mommy wants to apologize. I didn't realize how unsafe it was to let you use the screen so much. I hope you'll forgive Mommy. We're going to spend less time on the screen and we're going to spend more time playing together, okay? I mean, just that basic love, right? Like just really communicate that this is out of love. Take ownership. So it's not something that they've done bad. It's not a consequence. And they just understand that you're doing this for their best. And of course, they have limited ability to understand, but they understand love.
Yeah. Well, and then you hope one day right there, senior, and they say, hey, what was the biggest influence on your mom? And they remember that you made those small deposits in preschool, first grade. They won't get it now, but they'll get it at some point. And even if they don't get it, you're still putting them on a path, to success. So, well, I'm going to kind of hand you over the keys to the castle now, and you can, share your screen and walk us through these devices. So if you have, maybe you can tell them to, but I think it's an iPhone, anything, an Apple device. She's going to walk you through those settings right now.
Yeah, so thank you so much for all those great questions. And you guys can all reach me. You can send me a friend request on Facebook and send me any messenger, questions if you didn't get them answered. So I'm Amethyst Mills Thomas on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at Amethyst May. And Justin is more than welcome to share my email address with you too. So just so you know, I'm totally here for you. So I'm going to go ahead and share.
We'll put your Instagram and your Facebook in the comments so they can grab it from there.
Good. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. And so typically I come and I give presentations to churches, schools, communities. Lately, I've been doing them in people's living rooms like this, right? Because even I have to adapt and change since I can't come and speak to you. So if you want to go more in depth, you are welcome to invite me to your living room with your friends, with your classmates, with your school community, where I can go more in depth. So I'm just going to try to go quickly through this. Justin, how much time do we have about?
You're good. I mean, we got 30 minutes, 20
Okay.
minutes, wherever you want to hit. Yeah.
Okay. Just so you know, it's typically like a 90-minute conversation, and even then it's pretty speedy. So this will not by any stretch of the imagination be exhaustive, but I feel like these are the most important things to hit on, okay? So this is my family that I just referenced to, so you can just see who they are. My husband and my 3 kids. And I have, I told you I started as a mom, but I have since been interviewed, for newspaper articles and podcasts and these types of things, just because this is an issue that affects everyone, but no one's really talking about with authority. Have you guys noticed that? That has definitely been the case, at least in my community. And the reason why we come and talk about it is because of these types of statistics. It basically show that we have to get engaged, because when we do, later, these preschoolers who are going to turn into teenagers, they will respond because we've been involved. And you guys can read that. All of these amazing statistics, and one of which says that most parents have no idea how to monitor their kids' online activity. So we're going to learn how to do that here today, so that you are not a part of that 80%. And I also just love this quote that says, "My success as an adult today can be blamed almost wholly on the fact that my parents were involved in my life." And my heart is so warm to know that my son blamed me today for being a part of the success in his life. And I want you to have that privilege as well. And the reason why it's so important to have this conversation is because it does affect their health, like we talked about with the preschool brain, the prefrontal cortex, all the way through high school and into college. And then it affects school and how they are learning. And of course, that is totally different today, because kids are curious, and you were too. And the thing is that when we hand them adult devices, there is adult content on there. So how do you manage that? And then there's the illusion of an anonymity, where people feel, like teens in particular, that they can post things that will disappear, and it never really disappears. And of course, there is the danger of online predators that is very real and different than when we were growing up and there were kidnappers that we were afraid of. Now it's very, very different. And ultimately, relationships. We want to be close with our children, and we want to be able to not be those families that are always looking at a screen, shoulder to shoulder, but really talking and playing games. I shared the expert advice with you that mostly just covered the fact, that we're going to talk about quality versus quantity. And I also just wanted to tell you that I also have some more resources. And if you send me your email address, either through Justin or through this other messenger platform, I send out occasional newsletters, not a ton, with updated information and links on these types of things. And this information that I shared with you is from Common Sense Media, and they are an excellent resource for all sorts of questions that you had. But there's also a really great resource through Covenant Eyes that provides a filter, but they're also providing a resource for a digital detox, and that's free. And that's going to teach you how to get off your screens with your kids by providing activities. So those are some of the expert advice I wanted to share with you guys. These are just kind of the quantity that I was telling you about. So the AAP definitely talks about quantity, and there's reasons for it. But for our school age kids and our kids that have to be on screens more, we are going to focus on quality more, but you need to know that the quantity does affect. As you can see, 0 to 2 years should not have any exposure to technology. So it is kind of a wake-up call for us. Because they, as you all know, they affect our sleep. We do need to play outside. And because they do cause anxiety, depression, and they are addictive. There's the other big topic, and I'm just kind of flying through this real quick because of time, but read this quote. It's pretty powerful. This is Dana Gresh, the author of 6 Ways to Keep the Good in Your Boy, which is the book that I read and started that group in my living room so long ago. And she basically shares with us that pornography is so different. I actually grew up with Playboy on my coffee table. That was actually on my coffee table growing up. Now, did you know that Playboy is no longer in print? Do you think that's because pornography is no longer popular? Well, of course not. It's because you can find pornography on your devices. And so we need to protect our children from finding it or for it being found as often as we can, because as you can see, they start looking at pornography at very young ages, and there is no demographic for pornography. It affects boys, girls, men, women, pastors, professionals, husbands, wives, the rich and the poor. And it is a huge money maker. And these statistics about the hours spent on this greatest Pornhub site, this was before COVID-19, and now the hours spent on pornography is exponentially grown. And then there's the issue of apps. So the big number in the center says 13, as a reminder to you that these apps are not permitted for children under the age of 13. They are often used by children under the age of 13 because parents have been bullied into letting them have them. But remember what I said, you are the boss. So we're going to talk, I'm going to have a list of 10 things you can do to help protect your child today. Is anybody here like a list, you know, to-do list? Any moms out there who love to check something off? Dads, I'm all about a list. And I'm not going to read them all 10 to you today, but I'm going to show them here and you can access them. If you get your email to me, I'll send them to you. But we're going to talk about how we're going to talk about 5 of them today. And we're going to talk about why they're important and how we can implement them into your kids' lives. And so the 5 that I thought were most important for the sake of time are to set up parental controls on any device your child uses, number 1. And so we are going to do that today for all Apple products. If you have an Android, we aren't going to cover that today, but there is good news. There is now, I think last time I came and spoke to you guys, there was nothing much you could do about it. Now there is. So that is great news. And I have all the resources you need for that. Plus, if you don't reach out to me, you can find the answers to anything on YouTube. Just type in how to protect my Android device and you will see an exhaustive and well-explained video on that, just so you guys know. Number 2, disable the internet on any device your child uses. Like I said, you guys might think I'm crazy or stiff, but the Safari is the easiest way to protect your device. So if you're letting your kid have an iPod Touch, for example, and you have given that to them because you think that's better than getting them like a Game Boy or something like that, because you want them to be able to play games and you want them to connect with their friends via text, just take Safari off and I will show you how to do that. It is super simple and is the best thing you can do to protect your child. Trust me. Also, keep all computers and tablets in a common area. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but super important. And that's going to require a conversation. And you can see, you can read them all as I go, but I'm going to highlight just the 5. Number 8 is to create device-free zones. And that is, again, a great dinner time conversation to have with your family. So you can say, hey, family, let's talk about this. What are some areas where we should not have our devices? And, you know, if you guys have younger kids and like you said, Justin, they're saying, well, Daddy, you're always on a Zoom call, right? They might say, well, Daddy, I wish you didn't have your phone at the dinner table. Or Daddy, when we're outside playing kickball, I wish you weren't checking your texts, right? And you know, you might be a little bit convicted. You might be like, oh, dang, I am on my device a lot, right? But it's a good conversation to have. So the most common ones are the dinner table, the bathroom, while you're together with family night doing games or movies. And some people even like to say in the car. I tell my kids they need, if they have an like ear pods or earbuds in, they can only have one when they're in the house, because if I'm calling for them and they can't hear me, then that's not okay. And we have a small house. So that's something that you can have a really great conversation about. And then these are all such good ones. So I want to go over them, but I know for time I can't. Create a charging station in the common area at nighttime. This is something, I think this is actually on the next 10. I have 10 things you can do today and 10 things you can do next week. But this is one that I wanted to make sure was here, that create at this charging station at night. So I leave my phone out in the living room to charge overnight. I kind of feel like it's my daily Sabbath. Because screens actually do impair our sleep. And there's lots of research that is probably is going to come out in the next 5 years about how dangerous it is to have it close to us when we're sleeping. But in particular for your older kids, if they get accustomed to sleeping with their devices, you're never going to get them away from them. And they truly impair our kids' sleep, because every time they get a notification, they wake up and then they check for a comment or a text or whatever. So I just want to encourage you in that. So reach out to me. I'll get you this list so you don't feel like you have to ferociously write it all down. So here is the hands-on training that you've been waiting for. Are you guys ready? Okay, the good news is that what I'm about to show you applies to an iPhone, an iPod Touch, an iPad. So any Apple device, these happen to be the same restrictions on all of them. What's really cool is that there are restrictions there. The really uncool thing is no one tells you that. So when you buy a device, if you ask me, they should say, hey, Justin, congratulations on your purchase of a brand new iPhone. Do you have kids at home? And Justin would say, in fact, I do. I have a lot. And they would say, okay, would you like me to show you how to set up these parental controls? And Justin would be like, yeah. And it would take them 5 minutes and he would walk out with a safe device. But instead, Justin is walking out of the store with a loaded weapon. And you are about to see why. Okay, what I'm about to show you is what you're going to see on your screen as long as you have upgraded to iOS 12. If you haven't upgraded for a really long time, yours is going to look a little bit different. And again, you can search that on YouTube, or you can reach out to me and I can give you the link to find out how to do that. But hopefully this has been the case for a couple of years, so hopefully you have already. So what you're going to do is you're going to log into your phone, and you know that it should be password protected, your phone. First of all, if your kids know your password, I would suggest that you change it, okay? And that if they don't have their own device yet, then you change yours before you hand it over to them, so that you're the boss and they have to ask you permission for it, right? If they have their own devices, you need to have their passwords at all times, all right? So you log in and then you go to settings, the little gray, option. And then here you're going to scroll down and you're going to see screen time. Okay, so click on screen time. It's going to ask you to put in a passcode if you haven't set this up before. Now, everybody look at me. Look at me. This is super important. You are going to put in a code, and it has to be one that your child will not guess, but that you will not forget. I don't want to get any messages about this being a problem. I'm telling you loud and clear. If you forget this code and you want to make changes, the only way to make a change is for them to erase your phone and start over. And the reason why that is because they don't want your kids changing the code and making it the way they want, right? So this is the way we want it, but you might want to password protect your passwords in the notes section, which you can do with your thumbprint, okay? So that's my advice for how to remember that, because I know it's so hard to remember the millions of passwords we have. I get it. So you're gonna put that in twice, and then you can see on the left, it says today. This is so cool. So it tells you about your screen time and informs you how much time you're spending on all the different areas of your phone and how much a day, and whether it's up or down for week to week. And in this case right here, it says that I have a limit, and we're going to talk about that. And then over here, it says the last 7 days. So it's telling me for an average of 6 hours a day I'm spending on my phone. I know you're like, Amethyst, this is ridiculous. But I do most of my job on my phone, so don't judge me. Okay, and so when you go here and it says screen time and you scroll down, there's these 4 different options that we're going to focus on today. So this first one is downtime, which is super cool because it allows your phone to go to sleep and not to bother you for a certain amount of time, which is excellent if your children have a device. It's also excellent for you as an adult. So for example, even on my phone, I don't want to be disturbed from 11 to 6:15 a.m., right? I need sleep too. So we'll talk about that. And then there's the app limits. And you saw on the previous screen, you can limit certain apps. Like I only want games to be allowed to be played on my phone for an hour. I don't play games on my phone, but my 11-year-old does sometimes. What if I get busy working and she's on the couch playing a game and I've lost track of her? Well, the phone hasn't lost track of her, right? And it's gonna stop her at an hour. So that's awesome. And these are all new since I came and visited you last time. So if you heard me speak to you last time, these weren't allowed.
Hey, Amethyst, so when they reach that hour limit, what happens to the phone?
I'm pretty sure it alerts you and it says your time is up, or there's another one that says you have 5 more minutes or something like that. There's either like a countdown. I know that's the case with YouTube. So I'm not sure if it is with the game one or not. I've not actually seen it, but it either will stop you or it will warn you with a 5-minute warning. And then the green one is always allowed. So if you want to have downtime, but you want your phone always to be available for emergencies, for example, you can have that always allowed. And then most importantly is the last one, which is the content and privacy restrictions. So every time I refer to one of these 4 controls, you're going to come back to this screen, okay? So now let's look at downtime. So you're going to click on downtime, just the toggle. If you ever try to swipe it with your finger and it drives you crazy, a little tip, you don't have to swipe it, you just tap it with your finger and it will turn on and off just by tapping. And then you choose the start and end time that works best for you or for your child. And again, if you are practicing this on your iPad right now, your child's iPad, for example, you can go back and do this on every single person's device in your family, okay? So that's all that is. And then the next one is the app limits that we referred to. So you can click on the different kinds of apps that are here. You can see there's so many, right? So for example, in this situation, I'm choosing games. Okay, I'm gonna click on games and it's gonna pop you over to the screen that says games. And then you're gonna add your limit. And that's where you would say the amount of time that you think is appropriate for yourself. Maybe you get stuck playing Candy Crush for too long and you need to limit yourself, or for your child. Super easy. And then this is the always allowed that I mentioned. So for example, these are the things I'm keeping on all the time. My messages, my FaceTime, my maps, Waze, all these types of things. So you can choose whatever things that you want to always be awake and alive and available at any time on your screen. And that you can do that for you and for your kids. And then this is the most important one. This is the one I was referring to, the loaded weapon. So I wish that I could hear you guys. This is one of my favorite parts of the conversation. So when you click on content and privacy restrictions, and then you click on content restrictions, I would love to hear from you what it says right here for music, podcasts, and news. Typically, if you have not set up your restrictions, it says explicit. Explicit is so troubling that they would sell you a device in the store to Justin with all these kids. Why would they do that? It's just inappropriate. Why not sell Justin something that has clean music? And if he wants to listen to explicit, he can change it. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. And so oftentimes we buy our children devices, We buy our teens devices and it's all set up to explicit until we change it otherwise. But none of us even know this is there. So this is the good news today, is that I'm showing you how to change it. And so you can see that there's all sorts of different options for each thing. So music, movies, TV shows, books, and apps are going to be different depending on which child is using that device. Notice that books also has an explicit option. Isn't that troubling? It is to me. I don't know if you're aware of this. You probably aren't, but children's books have a new genre of pornography. They're not images, they're words created for children. This is a way that we can protect the device and protect them from finding those types of books on accident or on purpose. Just to warn you, with the web content with unrestricted access, if you limit that for yourself, it's probably going to be a very strong filter, and it may not let you do things even like Amazon Prime shopping. So for yourself, it's going to be, you probably want it to be unrestricted. But if you are sharing your phone with your child, you can easily disable Safari before you give it to them, or change this right here to have restricted access. Okay. And then this is super sad and interesting. Also, did you know that Siri can talk dirty? She has an explicit language feature. Why is that necessary? I don't understand. But the good news is you can control the way she talks right here. And if you continue to scroll down, you're also going to see the multiplayer game option in the Game Center. So this is becoming more and more of an issue, especially with COVID and shelter in place, is that many kids are gaming with each other, and they're doing this to be social. So it could be considered a quality conversation, right? Especially older teenagers are playing Fortnite, and they're playing with their friends, and they have headphones on, and they're talking to each other as they're playing, and they're convincing their parents that this is a good thing because it's their social outlet. I'm not going to make a judgment call on that. That's totally up to you. But one thing that I would suggest is that you have some sort of restrictions on that if you allow them. And here you can do that. You can either not allow multiplayer games, or simply don't allow adding friends, which would mean that you would say multiplayer games are okay, but adding friends are not okay. And this would be great for a younger child. So they could come to you and say, hey, Mom, I want to add Joey, our neighbor, to this game so that he can play with us, since I can't play with him right now outside, you know, during shelter in place. And you'd be like, okay, he adds Joey, and then you turn off adding friends. Right? So you can kind of control which friends, which you would do in real life, right? What friends you would let kids come into your house. So you can control that here. It's super important, back to one of the issues we talked about, which was the predators. Predators are finding their kidnapping is starting here. It's either starting in social media platforms where they're grooming people to be kidnapped, or they're grooming them here on interactive games. So you can control that here, which is awesome. And then this is if you were wanting to disable Safari, this is how you do it. So remember, we're still on content and privacy settings, and you would scroll down to allowed apps. And so again, just click your finger right here on the Safari, and it will go off your screen, so that when you look at your home screen, it's just not even there anymore, right? You'll see your camera and everything else, but not Safari. And trust me when I say there is no need for your kids to have Safari on their phones. One other way that you can control what kind of apps they get is through a family share. And so I don't know how many of you guys already use this. This is a way you can share photos, you can share calendars, you can share music, and you can also, so for example, your child could ask you, they could suggest they want the cupcake game, for example, and you would get a message on your phone that says, Charlotte wants to get the cupcake game. Do you accept? And I would say accept. And she would be able to get the cupcake game on her device without coming and having a conversation with me about it, right? Or if my, older kid comes to me and says, I want Snapchat, right? That's certainly a conversation that needs to be had. And I wouldn't say yes. I would say, let's talk about that later, right? So this is another resource that will keep your family close and in touch. How are we doing on time, Justin? Do you want me to talk about YouTube?
Yeah, please. Yeah, we're doing good.
Okay, and apologize if I feel like I'm flying through this, but for your time, I am doing that. So I know it'll be recorded and you can go back and you can ask me questions. Okay, YouTube, like we talked about earlier, the kids YouTube, and remember I mentioned that you can set up parental controls. I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. It's super, super easy. I will tell you that any kid who wants to get around anything that we talk about can probably, not any kid, but a smart kid who has every intention of getting around your controls possibly can. And this is probably one of the easier ones to get around, but most likely they won't even know that you have it set up. It's not like it's a blaring like, oh, your mom has a parental control on or anything like that, but it will stop them from seeing certain things. And that is the goal, right? So here you are going to YouTube and oftentimes when you go to, like if you put in YouTube on Safari, it's going to ask you to get the app, right? So most of you probably have the YouTube app. So you just scroll down and it says right here, restricted mode. And again, you're just going to toggle that on, click on restrict. And then here's that reminder to take the break, which is new too. So this is really cool. So if you know that your kid can get lost, or you can get lost, watching YouTube for hours, go ahead and put on a reminder. It's going to say, hey, here's your reminder. You've been on for 30 minutes. Would you like to take a break? So that's a really great feature for everybody. So that's kind of what I also need to say to you about this was on your phone. You can also set up parental controls on your computer. Okay, so this is why when I say there's 10 things you can do today and 10 things you can do this week, it's because some of these things take time. You do have to make time to do your homework, right? So this is one of those things. With YouTube, it's almost exactly the same. You just go to your profile picture. It says settings. It's going to be the same thing, the restrict filter mode, and you're going to lock it. Okay, but the thing is, you have to go to every internet web browser and set it up on every one. For example, you have to do it on Chrome, you have to do it on Safari, you have to do it on Firefox, because they all work independently of each other. Does that make sense? So that's my warning to you. And so, but it's super important. And it's also really nice to know that it's there. It's just a matter of us, taking the time to do it. So one of the things that we didn't talk about that's really, really important, I'm going to stop my share here, is that we need to have an overarching filter in everyone's house. Okay, and there's dozens, maybe hundreds to choose from. I'm going to give you one quick and easy idea if you don't want to do the research. And I have a whole list of resources of some really good ones to choose from. But a quick and easy one is Circle by Disney. So it's kind of like an Apple TV or an Alexa. It's something you buy for one time and you don't pay for a fee over time. So it's like $99 and it protects your entire house. So one day when other people are allowed to come into your house, it will also protect any other device that comes into your house that's on your Wi-Fi, which is really cool too when you have kids coming in with their own devices. So that's a really easy one. You can also protect it through like DNS through your own internet provider. There's all sorts of ways, or you can pay for an actual filter to filter out all your family's devices. One of the other ones I referred to earlier was Covenant Eyes. And Covenant Eyes is an interesting one because it's not a direct filter. It's more of an accountability. So for example, if you have someone in your house who does struggle with pornography, which is a pretty good chance that you do, because like I said, it is pervasive and affects almost everybody, that person probably does not want to be living in that lie anymore. So that person would come out and make it clear, find an accountability partner, and every week Covenant Eyes is going to send an email to the accountability partner, not to the spouse, but to the accountability partner. And it's going to give a review of everything that that person looked at on the internet that week. And it's going to red flag anything that is alarming. So it may not keep them from going. You can decide if there's going to be a filter or not, but you can, but it provides the conversation. So the accountability partner will be like, dude, lots of red flags this week. What's up? You know, what do we need to do? Do we need to change the filter? Do you need to, can I help you with a support group? You know, that type of thing. So as you're talking about launching kids, you know, and knowing that they're going to go off to college and live their life and like, what am I going to do, you know, when they leave? I can't control them when they leave. This is one of those things that kind of ushers them into more responsibility. But my overarching desire for you to understand is that every house must have a filter. Deal?
That's so good. One other thing I just wanted to say too is with these restrictions, right? They're great, and they've made improvements, even like you said, since the last 2 years that you and I have talked about this. But this does not stop us from still monitoring it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, correct? Like we can't. This is not just a one and done and say, okay, now my kid's device is safe. I'm done with it till they buy a new device. What is your kind of regiment that you're doing to check up on, you know, your like your son's phone, for example? Is it daily? Are you hovering over his back? Is it weekly? How are you guys doing that?
Well, now that, so we have young adults, so everything's different now. So with our 18 and 20-year-old, everything in me wants to try to control, but I can't, right? Because they're both going to be leaving for college next year, and I'm not going to be able to do that. But we are having conversations, right? Like he's like, "What are you going to do with me next year?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do you think we should do?" You know, I, you know, I'm just, to be totally honest, I'm like, I'm protecting you for your wife, for your future wife. I don't want her to be heartbroken to find that you know, have an addiction that's going to impact your marriage. So I'm doing this for your wife, you know, so let's figure out something that's going to be the best for her and the best for you and what's going to be right between you and God, you know? So we're definitely having conversation. But when they were younger, I was definitely monitoring. So one of the 10 things I would have you do is check the history once a week. So like put an alarm on your phone that's once a week. Hey, check the history on all devices. So your spouse's computer, you know, your computer, any shared device, your children's devices. If the history is empty, that is a red flag and a conversation needs to be had. You probably are familiar with private browsing. That is something that we need to be aware of as well. So if there is nothing there, there's a conversation that needs to be had. So while kids are under your roof, like before they're adults, absolutely be on top of monitoring it. And again, that goes back to the whole not having screens behind closed doors. You still need to be very aware and, you know, and allow, one of the things that experts was saying too, is that we can allow technology now during shelter in place to bring our relationships alive, right? We can say like, I want to see, I feel like I need to laugh today. Show me your favorite YouTube, you know, video, your favorite TikTok, your favorite this, your favorite that. I want to laugh. Let's laugh together, right? So you can use this for good, for bonding. It doesn't have to all be negative or potentially hazardous, right? There can be really good and fun that comes from it too. So yeah, just make sure to have that balance, but definitely be on it. A terrible, one of my worst stories that I've heard was about a family whose 7-year-old daughter convinced her parents that the only way she could get to sleep was to have her iPad in bed with her. And so they let her go to bed every night with her iPad and she would fall asleep. And so they're like, well, that's just, you know, how she goes to bed. And then one day they finally said, what is she watching, you know, that gets her to bed? And they looked and they were appalled to find it was pornography. And she's 7, a 7-year-old little girl. So that's why I said it's important that we start talking when they're really, really young, that we continue to be the boss as they grow, and that we do continue to monitor, like Justin said. You are going to catch them. I mean, that's one of my prayers. God, help my kids to get caught doing bad, you know, like catch them, right? And then we're going to show them grace, right? There's going to be natural consequences, but we're going to love them because we made tons of mistakes. I don't know about you. I made tons of mistakes, right? I needed the grace. I need grace. And so we are going to like welcome them back with open arms and love them anyway. But like I said about my son's future wife, we're doing this for their long-term health, right? Of healthy relationships and healthy spirituality. And so that requires us to be involved.
And then just kind of to end here, I wanted to just touch base on the new app TikTok. Not a new one, but now it's popularized and younger and younger on it. Is it safe? Should parents be even, because like we're seeing with like, you know, YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, they're just now starting to put these safeguards in. We're in this preschool age of TikTok. Does it have the parental controls yet even?
Yes, I have another great resource for you that just came out from Common Sense Media, and they shared about all the ways that you can set up parental controls and keep your kids safest on TikTok, because it is fun. You know, it's my 21-year-old, I think she spends the most time on TikTok. She's just laughing and giggling, right? But then the little girls love it because they love to, you know, sing along, you know, and like everything that was created, like you said earlier, Justin, like they begin innocuous. They begin with like something really positive, but the enemy takes it and destroys it, right? And makes it really dangerous. So it can be a really safe and wonderful and fun place, but then it can become dangerous, especially when it comes to predators, okay? So if your child is not set up with any privacy settings and anyone can follow, and maybe she's starting to develop, or maybe she's singing some type of sultry song or moving her body in a suggestive way, you can be sure that a predator is going to find her. And that predator is going to act as if he is her age or she is his age, and to begin grooming your child. And behind the screen, that person could be a very different age, different looking person than they project themselves to be. And like Justin referred to, the FBI is always 6 months behind teenagers and predators. And so they don't even know. And so don't feel bad if you are feeling overwhelmed right now. Do not feel guilty that you haven't done any of this. Just move forward with confidence with what you've been equipped with today, because we can't control it all. Okay, that's like number one, right? We can try to control the controllable. We can try to be proactive instead of reactive. Okay, that's like my call for you today, and to show grace when they do make mistakes. But yes, TikTok can be a wonderful thing and a really scary thing. So we really want to make sure we're taking, no matter what the app is, taking full precautions to make sure that we are using all the controls that are available to us, right? Like Instagram, there's no parental controls, but there are privacy settings. So you would want them to have a privacy setting so that you could have to send a friend request versus just anybody following you, right? For example, mine's public because I have a public brand and a public business, but your children don't have, you know, shouldn't have that, for example.
Oh, that's good. I just heard too that, you know, I was on a call the other day that there's 82 different social platforms, you know, and that number is growing, you know, daily, I'm assuming, because there's even the gaming ones, you know, like you said, where they're, you know, gaming together and stuff like that. So I would just really challenge the parents too to know that everything, even the Bible app now has a chat feature, and you can chat to each other in the Bible app. So even something that you think is, you know, harmless on your kid's phone, know that that could be happening on there, and how they're doing all these things. Just really be diving in. If anything looks a little bit suspicious, you got to dive in even further, because they're going to be ahead of us, you know. And that's Amethyst, you and I think we try to keep up on it, you know, as best we can, and we're feeling like we're playing from behind all the time as well.
Yeah, and just two things in closing. There's just so much I couldn't discuss, but just something that you just mentioned triggered a thought. Just there are such things as what are called vault apps. And so these are apps that are intended, they were created for harm. They were created to hide things. So for example, just when you're surveying a device, a shared device in your home or a child's device, make sure you just look at the apps, that you're familiar what they are. And if there's something that is like odd, like 2 calculator apps, that would be odd, right? Because you only need 1 calculator. If that's the case, for example, you would click on the second calculator app that just looks a little bit different than the one that's on your phone, and you would say that it prompts you to put in a passcode. And that means that is a vault app, meaning behind the surface, there are things being hidden in there. Oftentimes they're nude photos or photos that would get them in trouble, or information. Okay, so I just want you to be kind of aware of that, that is a thing. There are people out there who create these things to help our kids hide things, or not even just kids, but adults too, right? Snapchat has lots of hidden features called For Your Eyes Only. When I discovered this, I about died. Parents don't know these things are there, but in the same way, it's a vault within Snapchat, which means some of those pictures that were shared with them, or that they share that they wanted to keep and make sure that their parents didn't see, that is also password protected. So if your child is on Snapchat, please ask them to show you where For Your Eyes Only is, and to let you see, let them put in their password so that you can see what's there. And they are going to push you back on that, but you need to keep pushing on that, because if there's a discovery to be made, parents, you want to know, because you want to intervene before it gets too bad, too scary, too dangerous, too addictive. Okay. And then lastly, like I said, they can definitely get around a lot of these things, right? They can hide things. They can have their Instagram account and a Finsta, which is a fake Instagram account. Okay, I could go on forever. But ultimately, the most important thing is a filter for their heart. It's training them up as a child should go, right? In hopes that when they're old, that they won't depart from it. We need to take what we learn in church on Sunday, streaming from our home, right? Take those Bible characters and apply them, talk to them. Like, what did Joseph do when he was tempted by Pharaoh's wife? What did he do? He got up and he ran out of there, right? I mean, he was like tempted physically, right? But he got up and he ran, right? What about David when he was tempted by Bathsheba and he was like oohing and awing? He was at the wrong place in the wrong time, right? Like, we can learn from these characters in the Bible about what to do and what not to do, right? We can plant God's word in their heart. Job, who was around, like, could have been around like way back in Noah's time. He was there forever. And he said, I have made a covenant with my eyes. I will never look with lust at another woman. Like, whoa, isn't that something that could be written today? Right? So use these verses, use these characters to teach your kids how to have a filter for their heart, so that when, not if, they are curious, when they are tempted, when they are presented with information that would be tempting, though harmful, they would be equipped and empowered by the presence of the Holy Spirit and the power of His word and the examples that you've given them to act on the decision to get out of the situation, right? To flee. And so I can't, that's all, I always leave that to the end, even though it's the very most important thing I'm going to say to you all night, is that the filter for their heart is the very most important filter. And this is not a one-time conversation. This is a conversation that is ongoing, sometimes unwelcomed, but very, very necessary.
Well, no better way to end the conversation than that. So, Amethyst, we appreciate you taking your time out, and we hope that your family enjoys their time in quarantine as best they can. And we'll be thinking of your son as he's transitioning out of high school and into college and all those losses. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor. Great to see you guys.
Yeah. And if you guys want any of these resources, email me, email Amethyst, and we'll get this out. If you just popped on for a little bit, we'll be posting this on our Facebook page and our YouTube page in its entirety probably tomorrow afternoon. So thanks so much, Amethyst.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.